Welcome to this week's Property Matters on Dublin South FM, the show that brings global trends to an Irish audience. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or by email at hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Your host for today is myself, Karol Friel. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, we are still recording remotely as the station remains in lockdown, so apologies for any poor sound quality. First up today, I'm delighted to be joined on the line by Kate Fitzmaurice, co-owner of The View. Kate, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Carol. How are you? Lovely to join you.
Good, thank you. Kate, The View, there's been some interesting and beautiful imagery coming out and commentary in the Times at the end of last week about The View, a co-working space. You might just tell us about the location and the building itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The View is located in Malahide Marina, so you can imagine yourself, and it is what it says, actually, it's all about the view. So we're overlooking boats, a marina, we've got the beach, Portmarnock and Malahide Beach just beside us as well. And the building itself, some people might be familiar with the old Crusoe's restaurant. So back in probably, I suppose, into the 1990s and into past millennium, I suppose, the View, the restaurant here actually was a really popular spot with locals of Malahide. And what happened after that then was another restaurant came in, and the building had been sitting empty for about 3 years. It sits on the water on stilts. It has windows the full way around. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it was just such a shame to always, I suppose, see it lying idle. And we had seen that there was a massive demand locally for people looking for office space and just working from home. And I think we sort of put one and one together and it all made a bit more sense. So the building is over 9,000 square foot. It's over 2 floors. We've completely restructured it in that we've quite a lot of small private offices within it now. And two kind of,
Yeah, no, it's fabulous. Anybody who has seen any of the images that have come out over the last week or so, certainly The View is beautiful. The building itself is stunning. But I think it's interesting that this is coming from local demand. You know, the local demand, are these, entrepreneurs, self-employed people, or are they workers whose main office space is ordinarily in the city centre?
Yeah, I think it's different, particularly because of the time we're in at the moment. But for example, I myself work for a tech company and they promote working from home, particularly for parents as well, so that we can spend more time with our families. So I found myself last year quite a lot. I used to work from home every Friday. But I found myself working in local coffee shops or anywhere really that just wasn't my kitchen table, because I felt if I was at home, I'd get distracted with housework or just, I suppose there's just too many. I didn't feel like I was my most productive there. So I found myself in coffee shops along with a lot of other people, and we'd get chatting. And I found that working from home, whether it was 1 or 2 or 3 days a week, was a common thing for employees. A lot of people who would have originally been based in an office location in town, or Dublin city centre. And then what we're seeing here at the moment is that all of our small one-person offices are now gone. So they're booked for the next 12 months ahead, which is incredible.
Wow. And how many single offices do you have?
We have 14 private offices, but the single offices, we have 8 of them. So they would have accommodated up to 2 people. But what we saw from the outset was individuals coming in, and whether they were CEOs who had, moved home from the UK, or I suppose entrepreneurs or people who were creating startups, or people who work remotely all of the time, they were taking their own offices for themselves. So a lot of them have now, over the last 2 weeks, we've started moving them in. And the beauty of it is that they can go into their office, they're in their own private space and they're behind a closed door. So that, I suppose we didn't foresee the uptake of that being so quick. But it's great. It's a really, really good thing. So we're delighted.
Yeah, and I have to ask, is this coming out of, like, is this in response to the shutdown that we've seen where more people have been working from home, or was the idea to do this, was it kind of something that you thought about prior to COVID-19?
I think it's a combination of a few things. We did definitely think about it prior to COVID-19 because we thought that there were quite a lot of entrepreneurs in Malahide, a lot of people that we'd see or we'd bump into in the coffee shops doing the same as we were. But what we found then after COVID-19 and during it, I suppose, was that families were working together at home. So you had, obviously, the offices were closed in town. So you might have had two parents and all of the children at home. What I found in my circumstance was I have a small 3-bed house, but I also have two children and a husband. And for the four of us to be in the house together was next to near impossible to actually try and work. We didn't
And
have.
that's quite a common theme that we've seen. One thing that we've seen in the past is that our homes really weren't designed to accommodate all members of the family doing their individual interests at the same time.
No, and that's the thing as well. I think people who might have a spare room that they were able to set it up as an office are really, really lucky. And that might be working for them. But for people who don't have that extra space or just don't have space for another desk or another screen or a separate area out of the family home, a lot of us live in open plan kitchen and kind of living areas. And I suppose the way that our houses have been built over the last couple of years just don't really lend themselves to home offices.
Which is interesting in itself, isn't it? I think there's going to be some very key design trend changes coming out of the last period that maybe we didn't foresee before that. So I think that in itself is interesting. And you've translated that almost into the office space because we had seen this huge trend toward shared and open plan working spaces, whether it was for co-working or for traditional offices. They were just leaning towards a more open plan design, whereas now we know that that's going to have to change or at least become more flexible in its use. So in terms of the space you're providing, I presume there are actually shared spaces as well for people just to use maybe desk space or assigned desk space?
There is, yeah. So we've private offices with their own doors. Some also have their own balconies, which is lovely.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I know. They are the very nice offices. But aside from that, we have two smaller, what we're calling dedicated desks. And the idea with those is that you'll take them for 3 months at a time. So the desk is yours and no one else's. Your locker is yours and no one else's. And you have a lock and key. So it means you can bring in your things or you can leave them there, and that space, the chair won't be sat in by anyone else as well. Now we have obviously had to stay within the 2-meter guidelines. So thankfully, because we're just opening, what we've done is we've opened some of our dedicated desks in that we might have one available at one end of the table and one at the opposite end, instead of opening them all up together, just to make people feel as comfortable as possible. Downstairs, so we have 2 of those dedicated areas upstairs, and within each we might only have about 20 seats. So we have about 40 altogether in the dedicated desk area. We also have a casual, more open studio space downstairs, which goes out onto a really nice balcony overlooking the sea. It's very informal. It's the idea of it will be come in, work for a day, work for a couple of hours and sit where you wish, whether it's at a table or in one of our kind of couch booth areas. But for the moment, we haven't opened that because I suppose we can't, because we can't really accommodate people to come in and out as they please and sit where they like. So we're trying to control the area as much as possible. And I suppose we're in a good position in that we're still quite new. So it's quiet at the moment and people are really comfortable and they feel safe. So we're just going to keep going, I suppose.
Yeah. And look, I think it's amazing the take-up that you've gotten so far at being in such early stages. But do you have a breakdown yet of the people going in? Are they almost all self-employed?
The majority actually are. Yes,
Yeah.
that is what we're seeing. Yeah, yeah. And it's there's a mix as well of people who are coming in. They're saying what they want to do is network with local business people as well, because they found that working from home or coffee shops, they still feel a little bit isolated, and that it's not that easy to get up from your table in a coffee shop and chat to the person on a laptop next to you. Whereas if you're in a business hub, the natural conversation sort of is, what do you do? How come you're working here? And I suppose you're trying instantly to try and see whether there's connections there. So that seems to be a big appeal as well.
And it needs to be, I genuinely believe, having used spaces like that in the past, that actually co-working spaces, the magic sauce there really is the networking effect. It's the people that you're working with. There has to be some element. And I'm not sure if even networking is the right word, but more business community, because there's a, sharing space, sharing coffee machines, there's a natural relationship that builds up there that's much stronger maybe than the word networking might imply. And that's so important from a local business point of view. So how are you managing to do that given the restrictions in place at the moment?
Yeah, so I do think you're right in that the power of community is if people really want to see people in their own community do well. And that's where there's a bit of a local element to this as well. And that whether you're from Portmarnock or Malahide or Swords or Donaghbate or the surrounding area, we're all really proud of where we come from. So to have people in the one building helping each other, and I suppose with the aim for everyone to succeed and do well, is just a really nice, positive atmosphere. We do have a cafe downstairs and a balcony, but unfortunately, we've decided not to open that until the local cafes in the area decide that they're ready to open, and we'll work alongside them and follow their lead, really. And the idea of that is whether you have an office here or a workspace, that we're providing an area for business minds to meet. So if you don't work in the View, but you're looking for somewhere to have a meeting, what we're hoping to do probably from September onwards is to invite people to have those meetings here and to connect and to share what they're doing as well. So we do think that will be a big success as well, and that we're seeing people asking already, can we book a table for a meeting? Can we book a meeting room? Can you talk to us about your training room? So for the moment, we're holding back on that. But we do think that there's a lot of appetite there for it.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's important. Our offices were in the city centre for years, and over the past 18 months, we moved out towards City West, just to try accommodate travelling staff and things like that. And actually what we find then is, when you are going maybe towards whether it's Santry or Malahide or even out towards Ashburn, or you're constantly looking for meeting spaces, and increasingly hotels have embraced open plan to the point where not every hotel is suitable for meetings. So actually I think that the meeting rooms is something that has been important for the last while, but it's something that's going to become even more important actually as we continue to work maybe on a partly remote basis, and by the way, you mentioned that you're saying so I know that you're heading up operations there, but you have a team around you. So who's involved in this?
Yeah, so the View it's owned by my husband and his brothers. So it's Richard Bernard and Marcus Fitzmaurice, and they're also local builders. So they own a building company called B&G Construction, which has been really beneficial in, I suppose, getting this project from the beginning to where it is now. There was over €1 million was the total investment to change the building here from a restaurant into what it is now. So it's been a complete transformation.
The fit out does look fantastic quality, looking through the images there. I mean, you have the natural advantage of the location and the view, but to be fair, the fit out and the furnishings actually look top quality. And that's something that commercial occupiers and tenants want when they're going into their office space, because it is a place where you're hoping to bring in prospective clients, so you want it to feel very much on tone with your brand.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I went to a work wellbeing conference last year in Crow Park, and I think there was four of the main things that they had said workspaces or employees needed to work well and for wellbeing was natural light, quiet space, views where possible was something that they said was nearly next to impossible to find in the city
Yes.
centre. And then another thing was indoor plants came up, and that it helped people feel well and work better. And there was a couple of different studies conducted around that. So when we were doing our fit out, we were really conscious about the views that we set from each office. We have a lot of indoor planting. The colours that we've used are quite neutral. There's a lot of blues. We've used a lot of sea images as well from a local photographer as well, actually, who's done a lot of drone pictures. And it's gone down really well. And the people have said when they come in, there's a very relaxed atmosphere to here. So I think they know they're coming to do work, and they can go out and take a break and sit out and have a coffee on the balcony or just take a breather with views, which is hard to find.
Yeah, look, healthy buildings is something that we cover quite frequently here on the show. And in fact, only last week we had Marie Caffrey of Universal Floral, who are one of the leading interior landscapers and management company for office plants. And, she was talking about the well-being effect of having more greenery. And in fact, they were introducing these moss screens as opposed to using perspex in response to COVID-19 for social distancing. And I just thought it was stunning, so beautiful, and such an elegant solution, but such a healthy solution. I think, it's interesting now when people have more of an opportunity to work from home, that having alternative workspaces. So whether it's something that's within walking distance or a short drive from their office, so they don't have to go into the city centre, but somewhere that actually feels good to sit and work, that's conducive to concentration and creativity. I think that's really the key. So listen, best of luck, first of all, with the View as you roll out. In terms of capacity, where are you in terms of capacity? Like, are you still inviting new business and entrepreneurs at this stage?
We are at the moment. Our plan is to try and fill out the private offices because I suppose in terms of safety measures at the moment, they would be our number ones, and that you can go in and you can close your door. We're also starting to release some of our dedicated desk spaces, and like you said, we did work with Marie actually, and as
very good. That's only a coincidence.
we have beautiful plants dividing up the desks as well. So yes, we are releasing some of our dedicated desks, and we are starting to release the rest of our private offices as well. So we have a number of show arounds booked at the moment, but that is what we're asking actually. If anyone wants to come in and have a look, that they pre-book in advance so that we can organise a time slot to do that. And then Emma Jane Dónal, who is our sales and marketing manager here, looks after the rest.
Oh, very good. Well, look, as soon as it is safe to do so, I look forward to popping in when your cafe is open for a coffee and taking advantage of the views and working there. I look forward to having a good look around it and enjoying the atmosphere there. So in the meantime, we would encourage anybody who is looking for space in the Malahide area to reach out to Kate and the team there at The View. For now, we leave it there. Thanks again to Kate Fitzmaurice, co-owner of The View in Malahide. We need to take a quick break now. Stay tuned.
93.9 Dublin South FM.
And welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. I'm delighted to be joined on the phone now by Dónal Byrne, CEO of Big Red Barn, based in Mayo. Dónal, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Carol. Thank you very much for having me on.
No, I'm delighted that you were able to join us. I know you're very busy at the moment because, again, I've mentioned that you are based in Mayo, but you work nationwide. And today you're actually working on the East Coast. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we're putting up a modular building today in Wicklow. So it's a little windy and wild today, but we've had beautiful weather so far and it's great to be busy.
Very good. Well, Dónal, in the early days of your startup, people might have been familiar with some of the early press that you would have gotten around turning from an events sheltering as opposed to homes. So you might just talk to us about the origins of Big Red Barn. How long are you established?
We're going on 7 years. So we've done 1 year as a sole trader, and we'll be 6 years now as a limited company. So my background would have been construction, and then it led into events. And I was the operations manager for the Olympic Park in London, where we had huge issues with canvas structures during test events and during the Olympic Games. So I used my redundancy to create the Big Red Barn, which is a more stronger, durable structure that could withstand the Irish climate and the UK climate especially. For wind, rain, and condensation.
Okay.
And went and Dragon.
Yeah, go ahead.
Went and Dragon's Den and got a great success from it. And each year we launched a new product. So year 2, we launched Chapel, which was in line with Yes Vote and allowed couples of any sex, religion get married wherever they wished. Third year, we launched Europe's first 2-story modular structure for the event industry. And we co-ed with Lidl, the large shows, the National Ploughing Championships in Balmoral. Fourth year, we started a small 1-bed modular home, and that was a huge success. And then we upped to 2 and 3-bed modular homes. And this year we launched the dormer 2-story, 1,600 square foot aerated home that meets all building and planning regulations. So it is really morphed, and now mainly 90% of our business would be modular homes, and only 10% would be the vintage.
That's a really interesting development, and it's amazing to see the innovation that's gone in, because that's to put out a product of that scale every 12 months. That must be a constant realm of innovation for you and the team there. How many people are involved?
There's 42 of us at the moment, but when we started off, there would have been only 2 full-time and 4 part-time. The Enterprise Ireland, or the local enterprise office that steered us into manufacturing, that was the best thing that ever happened, because we've done an awful lot of R&D, and we've constantly put money back in every year, which has hurt cash flow, but has been very worthwhile into having a new product every single year. So it's brilliant. And the newest one, which is year 7, is the tiny home, which is on wheels, and is very similar to the tiny home movement in the US. So we're trying to have a product or a house that suits everybody's budget, going from 25,000 for the tiny home on wheels to 44,000 for the standard 1-bed, and then for 150,000 for the aerated 1,600 square foot dormer home. So the reason we came up with the last one, the biggest one, is the dormer. A lot of couples that were buying off us at the start were having a 1-bed home as a starter home or space behind their house for a home office, studio, etc. Then they were becoming more permanent, where we put more insulation in them and put more heating systems in them and solar panels, that they're more permanent dwellings. And that led to issues that can be down the road with planning. So we decided, let's build a house that's fully modular, that ticks all the boxes in relation to planning and in relation to getting you an aerated home. And we've done that now, and you'll see it on our Facebook page and on our website. We only put up videos there last week. It's really, really impressive. So 4 weeks in the factory, 6 weeks on site, 1,600 square foot, 3-bed, really open space living modular home. And again, looking at it, you can't tell it's modular, but it goes together so fast and eliminates all those headaches people have with organising the build themselves, block clears and plasters, electricians, plumbers, etc. And we now do the planning in-house as well. So you come in, you meet our engineer, sit down, he comes out, does the trials, does the planning, and it's fully turnkey solution from our side.
Oh, very good. Dónal, I watched the video on social media of you doing the walkthrough of the show home, the 1,600 square foot home. It's absolutely stunning. Now, the decor, the finish, it's absolutely fantastic. One of the things that I was really surprised by, because you just don't expect it in a modular home, is the double height element that you've left. So it's almost like a minstrel balcony coming out over part of the interior of the home, which is a stunning design. So how much flexibility is there across these homes, for families that might have different needs?
Every house we build is technically customized in some way. And I always had it in my head that when they made manufactured homes in America, they don't like to call them modular manufactured homes, that they were all off-the-shelf product. But when I visited Pennsylvania, and there's over 33 factories making modular homes, on the floor, out of, we'll say 100% of the houses on the floor, 80% of them are different, because everybody's site orientation is different, everybody's family needs are different. So that's why we redraw everybody's house, and we sit down at the start and say, do you need the 4-bed or the 5-bed rather than the 3, and you don't have to have the open plan living in the kitchen. You can bring the second floor all the way through. Do you need playrooms? Do you need offices? Where is the sun? So each house is totally different and customized, which means it gets a little bit more slower, but it means the customer gets exactly what they want.
Absolutely. And having the planning in-house, is it's a strong solution. I'm delighted you were able to do that. But I was also surprised that you were able to do that, given that the planning varies so much from county to county, particularly in rural areas. There's definitely firms that you would know, might be able to navigate the local planning process. So it can be difficult to do that. So you've an engineer that's actually dealing with planning across every county in Ireland.
Yes, because we want people to be comfortable and know that what they've done is 100% right, especially when they're making a large investment. So again, the big things were that there's a rendered finish on the house, that there's a slate roof or slate effect roof, that it has the heat pump system or the air ventilation system, that you get the A2 rating. So the other houses were mainly timber facade. And you'll have a lot of counties in Ireland that have issue with that. And they were a corrugated roof. You have a lot of counties that have issues with that. And the pitch was quite low on the other ones. They don't like that. They like a high pitch and trying to go with this tradition. So we just didn't willy-nilly come up with it. We sat with the planners, showed them our designs, made sure they were happy before we actually went to manufacture.
Okay.
Because we want to tick all the boxes and we want everybody to have a good experience.
And these homes come with a 25-year structural warranty, which means they can actually be mortgaged, because that's something in the early days that was an uncertainty.
Correct. Of course, everybody hears this word modular, and we need to actually change that. And I'm going to try and start that in Ireland, that it's a manufactured home, manufactured in a safe environment. So the difference and the problem the banks had were, if somebody defaulted on the house or the mortgage, they thought that they'd flat pack it and head off with it. That isn't possible. It builds very fast, but it's painfully slow to take down once you have it fully finished inside, and you'd need a team of experts to do so.
Yeah.
So they couldn't just, take away the home. And once the banks, and it's Bank of Ireland or AIB that have come on board first, they came out, saw it, understood it. And then we got engineers to write reports on it, and they got valuations done on it. And then once it ticked all the boxes and legals was done on it, it was able to be passed. But it's the words, it's just the terminology. And really there's no need to say when you're going for planning what the house is made out of, as long as the house ticks all the boxes.
Yeah. So the fact that you're dealing with planning, so it's everything assembled on site. What happens in terms of groundworks and access to services?
So you need to have your septic, your water and your electric on site. Again, we can help you put in the application to the ESB. We can help you put in the application to the local water scheme. These are very simple things. And we can help you with those. So once they're there, it's very simple. The house is manufactured in the factory. It comes out, it's assembled, and then the plumbers and electricians and all to join up all the services and the finishing touches, etc. So we want to make it as smooth a system as we can. And it has done that. So, for example, we brought the 2-story house to the National Plowing Championships last year, launched it, we took it down, brought it back to Swinford, put it back up, and then we put in the heat pump. Then we connected to the electric. Then we connected to the sewer, and it's now in its permanent state.
Okay, and the pricing for this, you're coming in at about 150,000 for what would, on a more conventional build, be maybe 100,000 more than that.
Correct. So the prices you're looking at in the west of Ireland is €125 to €140 per square foot to builder's finish. We're working out about €95 per square foot. So our house retails at €150,000 plus VAT at 13.5% because it's supply and fit. So it's coming in about 100,000 and in some cases far more to a fully finish. Standard is very, very high. And if you buy a house in any house in a state or anywhere, you don't get a 25-year structural warranty on it, even though it's spec'd in the Irish, if you read the legislation, that there must be 60-year warranty on it, but nobody gets that and everybody knows that. So it's great that you have that comfort. And if you have an issue, we'd have a team out at the ground to adjust a door or whatever little thing there is within 24 hours. And it's word of mouth that's been selling our houses. And if you put a house in an area, guaranteed you'll have a second house sold in an area within 12 months without any question.
But you're absolutely right that it's word of mouth, because I can tell you it was a fellow Mayo person who came to me, it was at least a year ago, and said, you have to speak to Dónal Byrne. So look, so you're right, it absolutely is word of mouth, and that's really positive. Is it all kind of self-builders or one-off homes that you're dealing with, or are you doing any development?
No, we've done 2 developments. Again, nothing huge of 100 houses. They're smaller developments of 4 to 10 houses, but they are becoming more popular now. Because again, with this faster development is built, the faster the developer can sell the houses, and the faster he can make money, etc. And but the bigger problem people have is the timescales on a lot of these construction sites, or even self-built, goes on for months and sometimes years. So to have it all in one neat package is excellent. Yeah. And the big thing is, we had 4 years with the standard 1-bed units and 2-bed units we were doing. So we saw all the feedback and the questions and things people wanted changing. So now at least we have a house for everyone's budget, from 25,000 to 50,000, 80,000 to 150,000. And at least people can start off and have it.
Dónal, I'm excited to hear you talk about the tiny homes, because that's something, the tiny homes on wheels, that's something that we really haven't seen embraced in Ireland, and the planning has been really ambiguous around it. But it's something actually that we've been following and promoting over the past decade here. So in terms of the tiny homes, have you looked into the planning there, or is the whole idea that they're on wheels, therefore movable, so once they're not kept in one place that you wouldn't require planning?
Yes, you're 100% correct there. Again, this was a thing we've seen in America. Couldn't believe we were going into factories that were making 2,500 square foot homes, and next thing there was a load of these tiny homes. And when we looked into them, it's a huge movement. You'll see it on Netflix, the Tiny Homes series. It's massive. And we put it on Facebook and said, look, we were willing to do the first one at cost price, which was 20,000 instead of 25. And the list was huge. We had to do a draw, and it was a guy from Tuam that actually won it, or Karol Friel. And he had been following us on Netflix. He had his design in his head. And his plan is that him and his partner move into this on the site where they are going to build their house that they have planning for in time to come, but they don't have the money, and they won't be paying rent in Galway. They live here for 4 or 5 years. They'll have their deposit saved, if not more, and they also have an asset that they can use to rent out Airbnb or keep for themselves. And it made so much sense, because a standard one bed off us is 44. It's nearly half the price, or it's 20,000 cheaper to go for the tiny home.
But
and
what's the situation with services? Is it off?
So
grid?
Again, no, it's not off grid. You have the option of trying to go solar panel or generator. So the one that we sent to Galway, he put in for his ESB connection. Our electricians are RECCE certified. He has like a little mini pillar there, plugged straight into it. Same thing. He had planning got for his septic tank. He installed that, and his storage is there and his water is there. So you could put in storage tanks underneath it for storage if you wanted. You could put in water tanks, but most people have them that they're nearly permanently plumbed up, wired up, but you can unplug them and hit off if you wished.
And actually, that's something that we were involved in a project a couple of years ago, the Ripple shipping container build. And since then, even though that was maybe 6 years ago, we still get a consistent flow of inquiries coming in. This is something that people feel really strongly they want to do. People maybe who don't want to get a mortgage, that want to live independently, not necessarily off grid, but certainly independently. They see this as a real option, and we've seen some amazingly designed tiny homes. So one thing I noticed from having, worked through the crash and into the recovery, one of the key changes we saw is that, new buyers and new first-time buyers and home buyers who were moving, whether they were trading up or down, they definitely didn't want as much space, so definitely we could see that there was, the requirements had changed. People didn't want, you weren't putting couples into 5-bedroom houses in the country on an acre like we might have been doing kind of 15 years ago. So that was one of the key changes. So I think the tiny homes movement is really relevant, but it's been hampered in Ireland because of the ambiguity about planning and this understanding that we don't embrace off-grid living. And, there are a few isolated examples, but it just doesn't seem to be something that the Irish state is willing to accept. I mean, have you any experience now, having worked across the tiny homes? Have you run into any of these issues?
Touch wood, we haven't, but we try to get people we go and visit the site, and we try and get all the boxes ticked as best as possible. But I've sat with the Minister for Housing, the Junior Minister for Housing, and I've sat with civil servants. And we are the only country in Europe that doesn't have a modular housing standard. And their argument is that Ireland is such an awful climate that their building standards are far greater than everywhere else in the world. So that's why they have pyrite and all these smart things and rising damp and dry rot and radon. But we won't go into that. They are very firm on that, and the Concrete Federation is a very strong industry. So if you can't beat them, join them, and that's what we've done and designed a house that ticks all the boxes. And a lot of the one-bed houses and tiny homes we would have sold come for two purposes. You made a very valid point there that there's a lot of 5-bed houses in the countryside with grandparents now living in them. What you found is these people are now downsizing. They are taking the 1-bed unit or 2-bed unit and putting it in the back garden, and their children are moving into their parents' house and raising their family in it. And it means that their parents having this huge house that they cannot heat. They have a nice, small, thermostatically controlled home that's very warm and easy to heat. They're in the back garden. They have their independent living, and they all live happily in the one space. And their children don't have a mortgage around their neck of 300 or 400,000 or 250,000. They've spent the 50 or 60,000 and everybody's happy. And that is a far smarter and more economical way of approaching the housing crisis that we have in this country than the daft approach that we have of throwing social houses up everywhere and taking forever to build them in a homeless crisis.
Look, Dónal, genuinely, you're preaching to the choir here. I think that in terms of the tiny homes, whether they're on or off wheels, there are so many ways that we can be sustainably building smaller homes that are absolutely well designed and sufficient for people's use. With the industry and really the legislators just haven't made the shift. And hopefully, we're going to see that conversation start to move, but I don't think it's a problem we're going to tackle in one day, so we'll leave it there for now. That was Dónal Byrne, CEO of Big Red Barn. We need to take another quick break and we'll be back shortly.
93.9 Dublin South FM.
And welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. We are, of course, recording from home as the station still operating remotely in full compliance with government guidelines. So I'm now joined over the phone by Karol Friel, Sales Manager at Topcon Positioning Ireland, and of course, frequent guest and friend of the show. Karol, you're very welcome today.
Thanks, Carol.
So tell me, well, first of all, we were just discussing there before we started recording that you were with us kind of within the last 6 months, but it feels like an awful lot longer because it feels like an awful lot has changed.
It sure has.
Yeah. So look, well, let's just start by maybe reminding our industry audience here, the work that Topcon Positioning does here in Ireland.
Yeah. So Topcon in Ireland, we supply mostly majority of our businesses in the construction and civil engineering side. So heavy construction of machines. We automate machine control on large excavators, dozers. We put machine control systems on them. Also, we supply geo positioning tools into the surveying equipment into the surveying business. Also, another part of our business is I touched on the last interview in relation to agriculture. So we're heavily involved in providing precision agricultural tools to farmers for their various machines that they have on site. So we positioning systems and also implement control systems to make them a lot more efficient, basically. So we're digitizing, I suppose you could break it down in digitizing the construction industry and also the agricultural industry here in Ireland.
Very good. And in terms of the construction industry, because of course the agricultural industry has to continue irrespective of what's going on around. So I'd imagine that's maybe that's kind of a conversation for a different day. But in relation to construction, how are your clients finding things over the past few months?
So obviously, at the start of this whole situation, when we were in, I suppose you could say, lockdown in Ireland, obviously things had quietened down quite a bit, obviously, in relation to our normal daily business. So those connections had quietened down a lot. But what we actually did is, in that particular period, we took that opportunity to make a lot more contact with the customers and kind of offering them lots of services, maybe that in the past we never really had a time to ourselves or our customers to look at. So maybe, for example,
what do you mean by that, Karol?
Yeah, for example, upskilling from the tools that we provide and the softwares, for example, and the hardware have changed a lot over the years. But we find actually as customers are getting busier and busier, and even ourselves, maybe we weren't up to speed and catching up with what's going on within the tools we provide. So what we did was we offered lots and lots of e-learning. So we offered our e-learning platform during the period free of charge to all customers. They were able to, they were able then to capitalize on lots and lots of training throughout that period for all of their staff. And then on the back of that, then we've continued that on with free webinars that are ongoing actually. So on-demand webinars for all our different tools that we supply, both hardware and software. And that's one of the ways we just actually use that period of time to communicate back to customers, old and new, and just offering them these services and catching up, if that makes sense. We actually had a really productive couple of months in that period, yeah.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And actually, you're echoing a lot of what we've heard in recent months. People are talking about where there have been client relationships there that have been ongoing for a long time. There's a real sense that they've deepened over the last while as people, it's almost cliche to say it now, but, there was this real sense of being in this together. And, there was definitely a collaborative approach there. But I know a number of businesses really have stepped up in terms of, whether it's using this time to adopt new technologies or to really, put a good, robust strategy in place for digital transformation. People maybe who it wasn't on their radar initially. But, I suppose one of the things, because you've a broad view, like looking at your customer base there, we've heard that we know that some companies aren't going to make it through this. And, there's an assumption that the guys who you're dealing with are probably the guys who were innovating anyway, so they're perhaps best protected. But I mean, are you seeing a gap between maybe those who have embraced technology and those who haven't?
There is, for sure. Even give you an example, when after we come out of the in 2008, around that time, the larger companies that invested in their digital technologies that were available back then, those companies have got stronger and stronger. And it seems to be a case of that's the case again in this situation, that we see those embracing even more after this situation. The digital tools that are on offer, the various platforms, for example, to keep people connected, not just people, to keep machines connected, and continuing now as we come out of this process after COVID-19 is to making sure that there's that connection is still there, but using digital tools to do that. So we see an increase in demand for customers looking for their machines connected back to the office and trying to keep in line with the requirements now that are there in relation to social distances, for example. So it is an issue for the smaller companies, absolutely no problem, for sure. But it's accessible. It's not like it was a long time ago where these digital technology tools were, they were specialized and maybe they were cost prohibitive. That's not the case as much anymore. So we still have a lot of clients, smaller clients too, that are looking at this and have embraced and are embracing it even more now during the current situation, and are looking a lot closer at it now to see how they can utilize these particular tools.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that previously people might have thought that they didn't have the resources to do it. And, when it comes to innovation, we consistently see that it's never an issue of resources and it's always an issue of resourcefulness. And that usually comes down to mindset. So, really these businesses, it very much depends on the leadership that's in place and, the priority that's given, not just to survival, but actually to innovating and constant improvement. And I think the last few months have definitely forced us to focus on that. I've seen various stats thrown around, but we do know that, in terms of digital transformation across the industry, more has been done in the last few months than had been done in the last few years previously. And that has to be a good thing. But I'm just wondering how that translates into, say, are you getting calls from, maybe companies that you haven't worked with previously, or, are you seeing that mindset shift starting?
For sure. We're finding a mixture. It's the bigger companies are ramping up of what they've done already in previous, what they had been doing up until this situation. So they've increased what their requirements. And the smaller customers are also coming back looking for solutions. How can we make the business we have at the moment more effective, efficient, more productive? How do we get the guys more productive? How do we keep them safe? Obviously, as much as obviously at the forefront of their minds. How do they make sure that they're doing what they need to do and to protect their customers and protect their employees? So they're looking for these technologies, these digital technologies that, as I say, have been available for quite a while. those technologies obviously are improving all the time, and they're getting a lot more cost effective now than they used to be in the past. And that's one of the things that's definitely leading us to pick up the phone or make contact with us, or as I said, they've been signing up to her. We've seen a huge demand in our online platforms for training and upskilling, and also the webinars. As I say, we've been given free access to our customers. A lot of them have been embracing that big time.
Yeah,
and actually trying to figure out where they fit in this, where they can fit in, what they can get that'll actually improve what they're doing.
Yeah, and it is all about improvement and learning at this stage, which is great. And back to your weekly webinars, that's a fantastic resource to have. And I take it now, even if they're being done on a weekly basis,
yep.
Is there now a library of content for people to go?
Huge store, huge library there offer all different on the geo and construction and agricultural. Massive presence there now of lots of stuff there sitting waiting on demand. Yeah.
Okay, and just in terms of topics that people can access there, off the top of your head, would you have a couple of topics so that people know what to expect?
Yeah, likes of machine control, for example, what we're doing on that in relation to modernising and upgrading and automising those machines or semi-automising them, and what the benefits are off the back of that, for example. On the geo side, then we've got some of our geo tools in relation to one-man instruments, for example, one-man robotic total stations, some of our scanning technologies that help increase and stop the demand for rework, for example, on site. We've got a big increase in demand looking for those tools that are helping, making sites a lot more productive, companies a lot more productive and efficient, basically, yeah.
And that's such a huge concern at the moment. Only in the Sunday papers in the weekend gone by, we saw some pretty damning stats coming out about the productivity levels and how, the drop is anywhere between kind of a 33 to 40%, depending on where you look at. But, they seem to be putting productivity losses in Ireland at the worst across the EU, which really surprised me.
Yep.
Does that mean that in terms of adoption of, new technologies, does that mean that we're at the bottom of the list across Europe?
To be honest with you, that's something that we would have noticed ourselves within the business. Obviously, talking to our European colleagues on a weekly, daily basis, we seem to be a little bit behind the curve, but always we do catch up, but we may be a little bit behind. But in saying that, there's some very, very big, large Irish contractors and companies that are working in European market also, and they definitely are embracing and they're bringing that embracing of technology back to their sites and their workflow here in Ireland too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the productivity losses, trying to stem the losses there and actually trying to recoup on any build programs will definitely be a motivating factor over the next while. So that's a huge one.
Yep.
In terms of specific technologies, do your technologies actually assist with social distancing measures on site?
One example straight off the top of my head would be, I spoke about it a couple of times already, on machine control. So, for example, dozer or anything, a machine like that's already at the moment, for example, it's a one-man operation, an operator on the machine, but normally it would require, for example, an engineer or somebody to actually be with that machine to let that machine operator know where he needs to be, what he needs to be doing at a specific time and place. But what we can do now is we can do that remotely. So we can put basically a computer system onto those machines and make them a lot more efficient. And also that engineer no longer needs to be with the operator in the machine itself or at the machine. They can work remotely. So that remotely could be anywhere, literally working from home, for example. They don't need to be on site. They have a visual, the data there they can see, and the software is available now. Keeps that engineer connected to multiple machines on site. So that really, really helps. For example, that's just one example of where they can definitely utilize and social distance there.
Okay, and in terms of take up, is your technology, is it on smaller sites, or is this all on very large project sites or infrastructure sites?
From small sites right the whole way up to larger sites. Yeah, obviously in the larger sites there's multiple machines, and the smaller sites you might have one or two.
Mm-hmm.
On the geo side, you've got now. In the past, we had guys pulling tapes maybe and measuring out and spray painting or chalking on the ground for foundations of houses. Now they can one engineer with one instrument can by not being close to anybody at all, can walk around the site and mark out the sites, the founds for housing site, for example, or larger developments. So it's
excellent.
Really
okay. And Karol, the last time you were in with us in studio, you were talking about some work that I know that in Topcon Positioning there in Ireland, you're very passionate about not just rolling out innovation, but also actually educating and including the next generation coming up. And that's something that we feel equally passionate about. In fact, in the first couple of months of the show here last year, we actually brought in transition year students from South Dublin and, got a level of feedback and ideas and suggestions because, again, we know that it's so important to bring in the next generation. And in fact, even secondary school, at that point, we'd want to be looking even earlier. But you've been working with Terenure, the transition year students again in Terenure. So how is that project going, or have you been able to continue that throughout this period?
Yeah, so we touched on that back in January when we spoke. Yes, we had rolled that out back in September, and that has obviously continued. It has been a really, really great success. And the great thing about it again is that is design, engineer, and construct was the curriculum itself. So it is based on designing a building, the engineering part of it, and the construction part. So taking the students through those different processes and what's involved. And we went to see them a couple of times and showed them, for example, the surveying side and how the surveying tools work. And then I was in digital side in on the computer CAD programs, for example. We showed them all of those things. And the feedback we have got from that has been truly amazing, to be quite honest. We've got a piece coming out with it in a couple of weeks' time in relation to it. And so far, the feedback has been from students themselves, most importantly, probably, the teachers and the parents has been so positive with those students and what they've got to experience.
Fantastic.
And the purpose of that, as much as anything, is just to open their eyes to the fact that there is a future in this industry. There is a future that they need to be considering when they're filling in their CAO forms in sixth year or whatever, and they're looking to go to the third level. Because at third level we can influence it, but we can't influence them on what course they join, if that makes sense. So this is
I understand. Important. It's almost too late at that stage. Say, was this the first year of that particular program?
First year in Ireland for that particular program, yeah, and but it has been rolled out in across the world, really. But started off in the United Kingdom, and they have a number of, I think it's up to 8 years now, and the success rate over there has been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal so far, yeah. And the industry is really embracing it, because they obviously can see that they need to attract into their industry. It's not, and to change the image, I suppose, of the construction industry that isn't just about walking around the site in muddy boots sort of thing. Like there's so many job opportunities within the industry itself that's not even related necessarily directly to be walking around the site. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and actually I think that's a really good point as well, that, perhaps construction has suffered a little bit of reputational damage as a career over the past decade. But actually, to put it into context for people, that, it is very much, in some ways, a technology or design, as in that. Yeah, so that's an excellent one. It'll be really interesting to see in terms of the figures over a number of years. Does it influence people back into the industry? Because we know the numbers are down, and it's something that collectively all of the different conveyancing, right through from conveyancing, surveying, right through to engineering and design, that all of the lobby groups are working together to try actually promote the image of the industry, which is a positive thing.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be an appetite, especially, as I say, for 8 years it's been in the UK. First couple of years, just a couple of schools, and now that has really ramped up to numerous schools around Scotland, Wales, England. And as I say, this is the first now in Ireland, and we've already had conversations with other schools that are really interested in rolling something that gets out similar. And I think if you think about the COVID-19 and what's happened in the students, this is an opportunity for the educational, the department to have a look at what way we educate our kids going forward and going through, secondary school. There's those talked about, maybe, there's something we need to be looking at even more and more. And, is the way we're teaching our kids at the moment, is it the best way we could possibly do it? Is it an opportunity for education and industry, for example, to get involved, and the community to get involved in how we teach our kids, because obviously that is the future of not just our industry, but all the industries out there. So it's something that we really passionate about, and something that we really, really want to push forward with.
Look, I think it's a really exciting project. It's one that's so important for the industry and for the sustainability of the industry. So we will keep it. We'll keep a watching brief on that and see how it goes. But for now, just well done for the team and contributing to that. Again, such an important initiative. So look, Karol, before we let you go, you might just talk to us just in terms of, what plans have been put in place for your clients over the next coming months. Really, we're only a month back on site for non-essential works. Are you seeing a ramping up, or have you put additional supports in place for your clients over the next months?
Yeah, for sure. So we're lucky, I suppose, I know we've touched on it, but we already have these digital tools available, and a lot of our clients already have these digital tools. So we're able to do a lot of remote support, for example, already through either all our construction, agriculture, and our geo surveying side. So that actually helps a lot. So we're able to connect to our clients, through remote connection. We can avoid going to site, for example. So we're obviously trying as much as possible to avoid doing that. But and what's great about it is that communication is ramped up even more, and there's an understanding there within the community now that we don't necessarily need to go to site to provide this contact, if that makes sense. We can do this remotely, and to be honest with you, it definitely has not impacted or how busy we are at the moment, because it's actually increased way beyond our actual expectations, to be honest with you, after what's happened in the slowdown, obviously, in around April time at the start of this process. But we've come out the other side of it, probably even stronger than we've ever been before. And it's actually been really positive. And as I say, the feedback we've had so far has been really positive.
That's good. Karol, I'm delighted to hear that. It's a really important, we need for the industry to make this shift towards digitising so many elements of the sector. So that's a really important one. Delighted to hear that the last few months have gone well for you and your clients, and we hope that continues. So my thanks again to Karol Friel, Sales Manager at Topcon Positioning Ireland, for joining us. And again, thank you to all of our guests this week. That's it from us today. And we'll be back next week on Property Matters, Dublin South FM, the show where property matters. You can get in touch with the show by emailing hello@ipropertyradio.com or on Twitter at iPropertyRadio. Also, my thanks to Peter Rice on sound and show producer Katie Talon of Hear Me Roar Media. We'll be back at the same time next week. From myself, Carol Talon, and all the team here, stay safe.